And welcome to Project Peak Performance. This week's is a special episode, a little bit of reality TV podcasting, if you like, from an experience that I've just gone through, which I would put up there as probably in my top three experiences, top three trips that I've ever been on, watching the elites of the elites in the ultra running world. And before you switch off in fear that I'm about to talk about ultra running in its specificity, I'm not. I'm going to talk about more the failures of some of these elite athletes that have then resulted in some amazing achievements. And what I took away from this trip, being in the shadow of the Mont Blanc mountain in Chamonix in France, and watching people go up and down hills, and also the finishing experiences, watching the tears, watching the celebrations, watching family and friends supporting, and watching people that are in a like-minded way of trying to experience challenge, difficulty, putting their body under stress to achieve what I was thinking in my head yesterday when I went out for my first home turf run, was people that were stepping out of the shadow of the person they could potentially be and stepping into being that person. That is how I was articulating in my head as they went through the finish line. It was their moment of stepping out of the shadow of their potential into the superhero in their own movie. And that is how I kind of took it. So I just thought it's a great place to talk about. And what was also, gents, very exciting and also very eye-opening for me as someone that does everything that we do on the project is I'd followed Tom Evans' journey, who is a Red Bull sponsored athlete, an Adidas sponsored athlete. He was GB's hope. He won the Western States last year, which is one of the big American races. And he's been doing a podcast and a series on his build up to the UTMB final race and all the meticulous preparation that he's gone through. This is a challenge that's been 4 years of his life. And he was in the leading pack when we went to sleep because the race starts at 6 p.m. in the evening. By the time we woke up, he DNF'd. So 4 years of his life into this race, and that's the second year in a row that he did not finish. Last year, there's a guy called Jim Wormsley, an amazing documentary on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it about Worms. It's called Wormsley. He broke the course record. He's probably one of the top three best ever ultra runners. He won it last year. He'd also DNF'd by the morning that we woke up. So these guys had committed everything to this race and hadn't finished. And the guy that won it wasn't even indexed as one of the spotlight runners. He wasn't even sponsored. And bearing in mind, normally the top 50 are all sponsored by these races. So it was such an eye-opening way to see that actually it doesn't always go to plan. You can dedicate and commit your whole life and be perfect in every way leading into this race. But the best of the best were DNFing. And the French hope, he DNF'd as well. So it was like the people that were meant to be the top three all did not finish this race. And I just found that very eye-opening to show everyone that in the reality of life, in the reality of the world, it doesn't always go to plan, you know? And that was the takeaway from the race was those moments, seeing the average person step out of their shadow of themselves and seeing the elites of the elites not complete and fail, even though they've done everything and dedicated everything to that one race. It kind of almost made the average person think, okay, failure's all right. You just got to go again, because they will all go again, those elites. And other than the picturesque, you know, being away with the boys, lovely food, hiking mountains ourselves, being around like-minded people, they were the key messages from the UTMB Chamonix sort of takeaway, boys. So, yeah. What's your thoughts on that, Dave?
Wow, mate. Do you know what? I've got so many. The biggest one that comes straight to my head straight away is, I wonder what was the difference. So we've got a guy here who nobody really knows in the grand scheme of things. He's rocked up and he's just fucking won the race. Nobody saw him coming. Nobody's heard of him, and he's done it. Yet on the other side, you've got these super athletes who we can see, and it's documented, their training all the way. So I would go as far as to say and think that, well, they've got the physical ability to be able to do this race. Why didn't they? Is one question. And what makes somebody able to finish that race. I mean, I'm sure you've not spoken to the guy who won it, but what is it that you saw? Because obviously you were going into these different camps, you're climbing up different various parts of the mountain to see the different points where they're passing, everything else. So you've had a real good view of what are people looking at? Wonder what's going through their heads. Can you see light in their eyes when they're running? Can you see their heads down? What was it that you were seeing there? Or to answer the question, what do you think made the guy who won it, and the DNFers?
Well, the guy that won it had an interview afterwards. So Irish guy on the mic who was like the MC interviewed him, and he spoke in English, even though he was French, which was great. I think he spoke in both, to be fair. But it was his first time running the race, but it was part of his life. So he's actually a shoe engineer for Hoka, who's one of the big kind of running brands. And this is how low down the key he was in terms, because he's not a sponsored athlete. He works for Hoka. He wasn't even wearing Hoka stuff, and they didn't even sponsor him. And he's an employee of Hoka. They missed like the best opportunity for PR and marketing ever. He wasn't even wearing Hoka trainers, and he's a shoe engineer for Hoka. So that was sort of in a marketing way quite funny.
What trainers was he wearing, incidentally? Let's go and buy those.
He had North Face on.
Did he really?
He had North Face, yeah. And North Face had, out there watching North Face, they got the branding perfect. They had a whole crew. There must have been about 40 people in this like royal blue North Face and loud shorts, all the North Face shoes on. They were everywhere. And the female winner of the race, she was a North Face athlete. And I've got a video actually, I'll put it in the group potentially, but in the last kilometre, all these North Face athletes went up to this one corner as they entered Chamonix, and they had massive printouts of her face. They were all in the North Face blue, and they were all just going, KT, KT, K. And because she was coming into Chamonix, everyone just sort of swarmed around these North Face people and just watched her come through. And I was like, wow, North Face have absolutely cracked this on a PR. But this guy was a shoe engineer. He had supported and been like a volunteer at the event before. He had crewed other athletes at the event before, and it was at the pinnacle. He was like, he actually said on the start line, he was emotional. It was a dream just to be on the start line to go and run this race. And he was in the elite category. He's obviously got a CV of being a top runner, but not expected to win it, not even expected to be in the top 10. And he was the third fastest time on record ever.
Wow.
As well. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm trying to find a quote that resonated with me on it. Like reminds me a bit like the Wright Brothers when they did the plane. Like, you had the other people who did all the finances, the PR, we're going to build a plane. And you had like these guys in a shed with no one really knowing, but it was the passion to achieve it. And it's a similar sort of scenario where this guy's like, no one really knows about him, not really sponsored, has the passion. You can, like I said, the emotions on the line versus someone who sometimes, you can still get locked up in your sponsorship deals and showing your face and your podcast and whatever it might be that might be floating around those people. Whereas he purely focusing. And it was like, there's always that quote I always go out there. It's a bit like, what you do in training is, what you get out of the race. And it's like, there's some, like that, really like amazing is that in that complete underdog. I love an underdog.
The whole thing, which is like, if you set your mind to anything, you can do anything. I don't know how much of the world believe that. It's said a lot by the top 1%. But how many people actually believe if you set your mind to something, you can really do it? In their heart of hearts. I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's 10%.
I bet 80% of people don't believe that.
The 80-20 rule.
80-20 rule. I mean, you know what I'm like. I just follow that with everything. But yeah, I would imagine that 80% would love that to be the case and think it's a nice fluffy dream like the Tooth Fairy, but they don't really believe it. And I think that is one of the fundamental drawbacks. I mean, we see it all the time having the conversations that we have. And funnily enough, I actually was fortunate enough on holiday to actually witness a penny drop that happened with Harley. And I don't know what his worldview previous to this was, but I knew on this particular moment what this view was definitely questioned, if not crushed in his head. And it was something towards how strong he is and capable and fit he is. It must have been, because what happened was, we're in the pool now. I've mentioned on here some of the things that I'm trying to, push Harley towards for his growth. We wrote a post about it the other day, and he does his boxing, and I'm trying to make him do scary things and encourage him to do this stuff. Well, he's been doing his boxing for months now, and in all honesty, as a father, to tell you now, he fucking hates going to boxing every time. There's always, oh, do I need to go, Dad? Do we need to do this? Anyway, he goes, he comes back, he has a smile on his face, all his hair's all wet with sweat and everything. And I can tell he feels a bit of an achievement. Now on holiday, we're having a game of like water polo or whatever else it is that you play when you're on holiday. And my brother, who's quite a big guy, my brother's pretty much about the same size as me. He's a 6-footer, he's built bigger than me. We're all in the pool, and my brother goes over to Harley and tries to get the ball off him. At which point, Harley just turns around, grabs him, and throws him over. He was a bit off balanced. I'm not saying Harley's big enough to pick him up and throw him. But within that moment, my brother was like, holy shit, how strong is Harley? When you look at him, he's quite set anyway, but he's only a small kid. How strong is he? Well, just in that moment, Harley had realised something. There was a little glint in his eye. Anyway, a bit later on, he's boisterous. We're going to a restaurant, and Harley's like, he's flicking around and he's pretending to box and he's sparring in my face and all this. And he says, can I punch him in the belly, Dad? Now I know how hard Harley punches. I'm like, no, mate, I'm about to go for a meal. That's the go on you to do now. You punch me in the belly, because I know you're going to give it a bit of beans. So anyway, my brother's next to me, quite cockily says, well, you can punch me in the belly if you want. So he stands all tensed up. Harley wallops him, mate, well, you could see our Paul's face dropped. He was like, what the fuck was that? That's just hit me. In that moment, right there, I saw a physical change in Harley. Because these couple of things had happened in a short period of time with people who he's probably got respect for, hopefully with Dad, his uncle, he's seen these type of things. In that moment, his whole worldview changed about who he was as a person. And this level of confidence that came in him. And he actually said, we're walking, so how do you feel? He said, Dad, I feel strong. I said, I've never felt so strong in all my life. I said, it's good, isn't it? It's good. And that moment there, these are the moments that have got so much fuel in them. It's like you put in, I don't know, what's the strongest power source we've got at the moment? Nuclear energy into somebody. That there is what I'm always looking for in these types of stories when we hear, what was it that shoemaker did? That he had it in his head. He must have had it in his head. Today's not the day. Today I'm fucking winning.
Well, they say belief builds resilience, and I think Ian was just before obviously getting on camera. I mean, talking about what the course is like compared to even what you thought it might be to what it is. Like, if you believe, the resilience comes within that belief. You know what I mean? And that's the difference between like the pursuit of becoming, effectively, isn't it?
Well, we saw
yes or no.
About 70 miles into this race, this guy, because you can obviously track where they are, but you're also watching on the live stream as well. And it was about 70 miles into this race when the French hopeful, who was in third place at the time, withdrew. And he'd just withdrawn prior to that. And the guy that was leading was about 6 minutes ahead of second place. And he got into this aid station, and obviously the news had been fed to him that Tom Evans, Jim Wormsley, and this Matthew Blanchard had all withdrawn. And he was obviously thinking, like, I'm capable of having a strong finish, but now the top three are all out. And by the next aid station, he was 25 minutes ahead of second place. So that energy that you talk about there, that belief that you talk about there, was very evident in that moment where he went, I'm leading, but the top three guys can't catch me because they're not in the race. And it was like the Hulk had arrived, and he just pulled out of his top, and he'd just gone, and then he carried on with that momentum. I think he finished about 35 minutes, 40 minutes ahead of second place. And it was like, wow, like this guy, you know, was in that level of just next level speed, and it was just incredible to be able to see him do that. And then second, third, fourth, and fifth were all within 10 or 15 minutes of each other. So yeah, I think that belief is huge. And I think that moment that you talk about there, Dave, you know, with Harley, you think about when you see it on the face of a toddler when they first walk, they take their first steps, and you see the pride in their eyes, and the moment when a child first rides a bike without stabilizers, or, you know, these moments that we probably stop, don't we, after like 5? You know, the kid gets to 5, they go to reception, and it's kind of those magic moments of like losing the first tooth, or growing the first tooth, or walking, or riding a bike, or swimming, and they don't become quite as eventful or as momentary remembrance as what they do in that early stages of life, but they are the ones that you have to bring back.
Even just a simple one on that one, like Ted was just trying to pick up something a little bit more heavier, and he was no, and he was like lifting up, and he did it, and I was like, strong boy, whoa. And now he goes around the house and they'll go, Teddy, you strong boy. He's like, strong boy. He puts his hands up, and you could like, it's just those little fundamentals of like, I love that story, Dave, because it's just like what we talked about then, belief, like another unlocking, another key into another bit that's like unlocks another level of his belief system, that actually self-worth, worthiness, strength, power, but in a right way of like, you know, I'm strong, I can stand on my own 2 feet, especially with his age that he's in as well. Brilliant. Yeah, I love that story.
100%. I mean, it even made it better because we're at the end of the 6 weeks holidays now. So that's another excuse that if I was a kid, I would probably use as well. Oh, come on, there's 6 weeks holidays. Do we really need to do it on this? Yesterday was Monday. He goes boxing Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I took him there yesterday. Well, Claire took him there yesterday, actually. But before he went, he's running down the stairs, and he'd got this teenagerness about him, and and I said, do you remember that feeling on holiday you had? Remember when we were walking through and you punched Uncle Paul in the belly, and that feeling that you had? And he was like, yeah, and I could see the light in his eye, and the smile was there. I said, that has come from all of the hard work that you've been doing in this gym, and thinking that it's not been paying off, because you can't see the small things. It's when something big happens and it turns on, and you'll be able to see it. I said, and you've seen it now. So now you know the consequences of what goes on here. You won't have any problems now about going to the gym, I don't think, ever.
Yeah. These are the things that come from, you know, committing to something, working hard at committing to them, staying dedicated to them. And then those moments will come, you know, and like we said, with that kind of, is it 20% of people that do believe that anything they put their mind to, they can achieve? If more people could think that way, things would be more spectacular in more people's lives. And that was a big experience of being at the UTMB World Finals, was seeing that. It was amazing to watch the super athletes, but it was also amazing to watch, like in the CCC, for example, with the 100K, there were people finishing that race in 11 hours that were elite, but it was the people that were finishing it in the 23rd hour, in the 24th hour, the next day, where they were in what I would call the golden hour. The cutoff was 26 or 25 hours, I think it was. Seeing people come through in that last 15 minutes before the official cutoff was one of the most like amazing experiences, to be on the side and watch them with 100 meters to go in floods of tears, through happiness, through relief. Was like, wow, you think these people have trained so long for that moment, and probably gone through so many low moments on that race where they were like, can I do it? I don't know. You know, that was crazy to watch that. And it being that close to them, it almost made a tear. I think Timmy that I was with said, thank God I've got sunglasses on. Because like, you did feel it for them. You did. And it just shows what the human mind, because the body gets you there, yes, but it's the mind that carries you there, really. What the human mind is capable of when everything else feels broken, everything else feels unachievable. because this is the difference between the elites and everyone else, which is as exciting as the elites DNF'd because they realised they couldn't win it. They could have finished the race, but they didn't want to finish the race with a low, unrespectable time. So they had a different goal. And I think it's important for people to realise that their goal was to win it. And when they realised they couldn't win it, they stopped. I don't think that's a great message for people. I think it shows what you have to be in the mind of being a world champion winner, yes. But for everyone else that sits in normality, those people that had 15 minutes left to finish that race, that knew that 6 hours ago, that pushed through the grit and desire to complete the race, they're the real inspiration out of the race, because they're the ones that did what the average person wouldn't do. That was what I saw there. So I'll be back. I want to run it.
Did that pull in some of the emotions that you've gone with your running? Like, where you completed your first 100K, 100 miles, then done like an actual A to B point, like can I do this? Am I believing it? I know we spoke about it in the past, but did it pull in on the emotion of being relatable in how those low moments?
What Dave described for Harley there is exactly how I felt when I ran my first 100-mile distance in the 24-hour race. That moment where I was like, I've just done that. Like, that seemed in my mind, in the back of my mind, I had the belief that I could do it, but I didn't know. But to achieve it, which felt unattainable at a point, 2 years prior, was exactly that in every way. Business, life, my outlook has changed from that moment, because I was like, well, I can do anything. I have to work for it. I do have to work for it. I have to commit to it. I have to be disciplined. I have to say no to a lot of things, but I can achieve anything. It's just a case, I might fail 1 or 2 times, but I'll get there.
You said earlier about, we reached the age of 5 and it sort of almost stops afterwards that. And we've had Stephen talk about the ego states, the free child, just dare to be free. Like, what it feels like you have that stage up until 5, and then you go institutionalized, and then you're like told, don't do this, or yes or no, failure isn't there. Like, it's either you win or you lose. And what it sounds like is like, in the last few years, you found a passion to almost unlock that free child to explore again.
I think also being I can't talk for females here, but being a male that owns a business, that's got a mortgage, that's married with 2 kids, in the middle of their life, just turned 40. If I openly spoke about my successes with someone, I feel like I'm being arrogant and cocky. So as a result, me and Mike, my business partner, talk about it a lot. We don't celebrate our wins in business. We never pat ourselves on the back. When we do something, we just move on to the next thing. And there's a lot of talk at the moment with mental health and things like that about sharing weaknesses and sharing problems and sharing challenges. But I think there's also an art in how you celebrate your wins as well. And I think that's something which is quite suppressed at the moment for the reasons that it's difficult. I even find it difficult with my wife to talk about, the things that I want to achieve and I want to do, because I feel like I'm being boisterous and cocky and arrogant. And I think that's something that people struggle with, both sides of that, sharing the weaknesses and sharing the wins.
I think, sorry, Dave, I was to say, on when I did my feedback, my no fine Fridays, I always encourage people to, if you want to articulate how you're feeling in one word, it's 2 sides of the coin. So if you're struggling, you're feeling fearful, whatever that might be, what's that name and that emotion? But also, I encourage people who are the 7s, the 8s, the 9s, and the 10s. Like, I'm feeling powerful this week. I'm feeling like whatever that might be, to give the 2 sides to it, to normalize that actually we can say, like, I'm going to name my emotion, and my emotion is an 8 or 9 or 10. Like, I feel like I'm on top of the world this week, or whatever that might be. I'm a champion this week. You're right in your saying. I think we there's a right way about going out there, and I feel like if you explore your journey of emotions when you go through a journey of, like, when you you're trying to achieve something, you're going out there and you're highlighting the lows and the downs and the wins that come with it. When you do reach that pinnacle moment, people don't see it as just, oh, I've won that, because you've shown the down moments in it, the darkest moments, like when you've done a crappy run, you don't want to get up. When when you're injured and you've pulled yourself back out of it, I think that's the difference between the two. I think if you win on social media, everyone looks like you're winning. People don't ever see that other side to the coin. A bit like that guy, like they won it. No, he was a shoe technician for something, like, the thingy, and he'd obviously gone and he'd helped people and supported people, and he'd probably been up late hours and seen what people had done. Like, those are the bits where that's the reason why he's probably humbled in his approach to it, and why he probably got to the line, like, in tears, thinking, wow, I'm actually doing this event with a passion.
And we were watching and we were like, we wanted him to win, because we were like, the guy's not even sponsored. You can see, because they have their, Solomon, Hoka, North Face, Adidas, blah, blah. We were like, because he's not sponsored and the next 29 people are sponsored, it's like he became our champion. He became the champion because he's
you missed a boat out. You should have just gone, mate. I've got a hat, or I've got
here's an avocado.
On the avocado, yeah.
100. It was a shame, like 100-mile hat. Here's a pink hat. Like, you run that on the line. You now sponsored, mate.
Yeah.
I think you have to remember who, because I've gone through the phase over the last 24 months of who am I doing this stuff for?
Yeah.
And afterwards, I realised, well, no one really gives a shit that I ran 100 miles, to be honest with you. And I could tell in my family group, because my mum was like, well done. And my stepsisters and my brother didn't reply with anything really, other than like a thumbs up emoji. And I was like, that was a bit underwhelming. So then I kind of went for a few months of thinking, well, that's okay, because I'm doing this for me. I'm not doing it for anyone else. And then I've realised, actually, seeing this weekend and seeing the support that people had, I'm not just doing it for me. I'm also doing it because of how proud my mum and my dad will feel about it, in the same way we do about our kids. We have to remember that we are kids of someone else too. And they do want you to do something exceptional. Your parents do want you to do something because they want to feel proud. My mum talks about what I do to everyone, and you forget that. And my dad does as well, and you forget that. But then you also, you're doing it for your kids. Like last night, Grace, I got home from work and Grace said, Daddy, I want to go for a run with you, because she'd known I'd been on this running trip, and she knew that it meant something to me. So me and Grace went for a run around the lake together. And
I was about to say, did you pace around the lake?
yeah, we did, yeah. But then there's also things like, you've taken inspiration from my journey, and I've taken inspiration from other people's journeys, and you forget about the ripples that happen as well. So this weekend was eye-opening for me, because I realized before this weekend I was doing this stuff for me, and now I've remembered it's not just for me. It's not for everyone, but there's a small handful of people that take energy from me doing that as well. And that kind of almost makes you feel like you're not a lone wolf in what you're trying to achieve here, because it means something to other people. It might not be your wife, it might not be your brother, it might not be your dad. I don't know who, but there are people that it does mean stuff to, and it's not just you. And you're doing it to inspire 4 or 5 key people that will take inspiration from it, and you put them in your backpack and you run with them as well, or you cycle, or you hike, or whatever your thing is. That was a real big takeaway for me this weekend, which will stay with me now, because I know that if I go back and run this race, if I ever get the fortune of going in it, I will take my mum, my dad, my family, because they're the people that it does mean something to, and I want them to be there when I cross the finish line. So yeah, really, really cool.
I remember in Dimitri's podcast, he talked about finding the people who have been able to do it beyond him, and that's what him to find the route to heal himself. And on a personal level, you were the catalyst for me doing my ultra. And that's like a genuine, because we had that conversation we spoke about before. I remember sitting outside the gates just as I was about to go into ISO HQ, and I thought, I'm going to call Ian up. I want to say to him, like, I'm at a crossroads and I need that mentor. And you've given me that mentorship, and to be able to actually do Endure 24 with you there, I'd come back to the camp and you were there, and you were always like, right, what do you need? And like, I always go by help one person a day. And in that process, you massively helped me. And people said to me, you're a different person to you were last year to you were this year by you doing your ultra running. So
Mm.
like you were the inspiration, and you right said it might not be your mum and dad, your brothers, your sisters, your friends, etc. But you were the person I was like, right, I know someone that actually I know of who's done that. So it is achievable. And you gave me the belief to start the passion, to start the resilience, to start the training.
Well, you asked the question, and I said to you, do you want to run faster or do you want to run further? That's the path that you're about to go on. You know, which one do you want it to be? And you said, I want to run further. And that's where it's gone from there, which is, yeah, pretty cool. So, yeah, it's been a cool week. I mean, we obviously need to talk about the lad and dad experience for Dave in more detail. And we need to talk about, you know, some of the challenges that have come. And I think as a group, we need to talk about our lessons and learnings over the last 12 months of doing Project Peak Performance, because it's been a big kind of staple in the belief for me of what can and can't be done with the guests that we've had and the conversations we've had. So I think that will help people by sharing those. So we'll do some more individual episodes. And yeah, I just wanted to share a bit of Chamonix with the rest of the world, because it wasn't just a running race. It was my first lads trip in 21 years, and there were no fish bowls or Jaeger bombs consumed. I can confirm. It was a very different party, and one of the best experiences I've had to date in adult life for sure.
So instead of climbing up a pole in Lineker's, you climbed up a mountain instead,
Yeah, absolutely, and ran down it. It was so great to be around those people.
Seems like you found a whole lot in there, mate. And one big thing, based on what you said in the a few minutes ago about why you do this thing, it seems as well you've found certainly one area of service. This is in service, and it's great if we can find a level of service, something we can offer out to the world with nothing in return. That is the ultimate paycheck at the end of the day. And not a lot of people even get to that level. But if you can find that you can get to that level and have something to offer, mate, and that sounds like your service. So what an amazing thing to have your service in something that you love, you adore, you're good at, you can mentor in, everything else. And in that moment, for you to see that, mate, regardless of the runners, it was worth it for that, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Perfect way to end the show.
Yeah, that's it, guys. And we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.